Join Time Magazine's lead education reporter alongside global educators and advocates to explore the impacts of teaching forgiveness.
I teach forgiveness because it can have a positive impact in my students' families.
It helps my students thrive in the face of adversity.
Students who can forgive are happier.
Join us to hear from teachers and thought leaders on how and why to include forgiveness in your classroom.
Temperature rise will bring widespread devastation and unprecedented extreme weather.
New coronavirus cases emerge across the country.
Obesity rates have more than doubled in kids.
Cape Town is running out of water.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching us live. And thank you so much for making time to join this session of the T4 World Education Week. Before I continue any further, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Lawrence Boachedankwa, and together with Florence A.C. Amponsa, we are your moderators for the session. Once again, we are excited to have this wonderful opportunity to share our school's expertise on this global platform, reaching out to policymakers, educators, teachers, among several stakeholders worldwide. Here at Lead for Ghana and our partner school, Dichemso JHS, we are working toward a day when every child will have access to an excellent education, irrespective of their socioeconomic or geographic background. Lead for Ghana is a partner organization of the Teach for All network. And as an organization, our work is deeply entrenched in community engagement as a catalyst essential for addressing the numerous challenges confronting education in public schools, ranging from infrastructure to human development. And as Lead for Ghana fellows work with various communities, they get to appreciate the peculiar nature of social structures and social behaviors in these communities. With an understanding of these patterns of interactions, we are glad to share our scalable practices from the Dichemso JHS on stakeholder involvement for quality urban education. Dichemso JHS is located in the Kumasi Metro. A bit about the school now, and it's an urban community in the Ashanti region of Ghana. The school is well known for her exploits in sports and other literacy competitions, including the Otumfuo reading competition. And fellows have been working with parents to run the Read to Achieve Literacy project, which seeks to provide foundational literacy support in English literacy, numeracy, and digital literacy. We are honored today to have a select panel on this call, and this panel is poised to share their expert opinion on further practical steps on the theme addressing the neglected challenges facing students of public junior high schools in urban areas. We hope that at the end of the session, these steps will be feasible in practice for those of us in other urban jurisdictions, and that others will also have a cause to support urban education in government schools. Now, kindly get interactive with us using the Q&A box. We anticipate your questions, contributions, and comments as we discuss the main theme for today. We'll be very pleased to respond to them. You can also follow or join the conversation on social media using the hashtag T4 World Education Week, hashtag Lead for Ghana on our social media handles at Lead for Ghana on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also follow Vikas Porter on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Please do well to bear with us in case of any unexpected technical challenges, as our technical team is working diligently to resolve any issues. Now, let me quickly move on to the introduction of our panel for today. As I rightly said, we have a select panel, and the first person we have on the call today is Mr. Peter Asamoah. Mr. Peter Asamoah is the School Management Committee Chairman of Dichemso MA Primary and JHS. He is a retired educationist, having taught for 38 years in public basic and junior high schools in the Kumasi metropolis. The second person we have as a panel member or as a guest is Mr. Stephen Senyo Tetegan. And Mr. Stephen Senyo Tetegan is an award-winning educator. He is an alumnus of Lead for Ghana. Until recently, he was the head of literacy development and leadership at EduSport. And EduSport is a UK-based charity organization operating in Ghana. And he has taught numerous students across 6 schools in 5 regions of Ghana, and served as Talma Fellow by teaching English language in Israel. And he is currently a Sherman Scholar studying for a Master in International Education and Development at the University of Sussex, UK. And then finally, we have Mr. Douglas Edu Nyantechi. And Mr. Douglas is the headmaster for Dichemso MAJHSA. He holds a Master of Technology Education from the University of Education, Winneba. Mr. Douglas has served as a mathematics and science teacher in basic schools within the public and private space for 20 years. Trained as a basic school counselor and a children's ministry worker, he has been very supportive in offering personal assistance to students. And Mr. Douglas is also open to integrating new methods in teaching and learning in a bid to change the narrative about urban education. I would like to welcome the panel. Thank you very much, sirs, for being on the call this morning. And don't forget that we are still on the theme addressing the neglected challenges facing students in urban areas, especially in junior high schools in urban areas. And do not forget to also drop in your comments, your questions in the chat box. We'll be very glad to respond to them. Also, you can follow the conversation on social media at hashtag T4 World Education Week, hashtag Lead for Ghana, on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Now, the time that we've all been waiting for, let us quickly zoom in on the conversation, starting with Mr. Peter Asamoah. Now, Mr. Peter Asamoah is on the call, so we are aware about the critical challenges that students from rural communities face. And there is a tall list of such challenges. I mean, we can talk about poor infrastructure, we can talk about classrooms and the trees, lack of teachers, we can talk about religious or cultural barriers in some communities, gender disparities, no teaching and learning materials, etc. That notwithstanding, we want to shift the conversation to urban schools in particular in Ghana. Now, Mr. Peter Asamoah, given your years of experience as a teacher in urban public schools, we want to find out from you, what are the neglected challenges facing students of public junior high schools in urban areas? And also, in what ways are these challenges critical? Mr. Peter Asamoah.
Parents only get to know about the terrible things that they don't find themselves when they can no longer be controlled. Practical experience from Dichemso will be greatest favor. Last semester, the team visited the parents at home to find out why the child is always late for school or absent. The mom of the child told the team plainly that she is not aware about the child's attitude because she wakes up at dawn to go and buy the ingredient for her kids. Also, she comes back late from work. We have other parents who keep informing the team that they go to bed before their children come back home, sometimes as late as 12 p.m. Such parents are always quick to shy away from responsibility under the guise of businesses. Effects. Clearly, such parents are not able to hold their words to account and to talk about teachers as to whether or not the child is making any progress in the academic life. Home assignments are not done. Children begin to work with long reports after school in the name of going to play football, going to betting centers, etc. And parents actually have no idea about attitudes their children are looking for in order to quickly help them out of it. Action on the way forward. Parents in urban communities must begin to attach as much seriousness to the academic life of their works as they do to their business. They must begin to reckon that the greatest investment they can make in the lives of their children is the time they create to observe, listen, instruct, correct, so as to have a strong influence on their children. Then the second point is foster parents or guardians. Again, on the issue of parenting, the other side has to do with foster parents or guardians. Whereas foster parents, unlike biological parents are rather strict on their words. Some are strict on them for the wrong intentions. That is for their own self-interest. Most of these children parents have been brought from the rural areas to the city to work with domestic chores or commercial activities. Essentially, within the African context, this is not bad as most of us are poor communities, filled with uncles and aunties. However, it is good to use as a practice. The manner in which the child goes to be emotional and physical abuse at home is a problem that most students in public areas are facing. Practical experience. We have students who go to bed early due to numerous workloads. Next, students have little rest, not to talk about reading or preparing for class the next day. Others have only shelter and they have to better work after school to provide for their own food and resources. Effects. Students, especially girls living with unconcerned foster parents, have a high trouble rate because they get fed up with the tedious tasks attached to schooling. Because some of these girls are naive and have no one to confide in, you run into irresponsible men. Secondly, commit them on effort. Eventually, issues like teenage pregnancy and insolence come down on which they are sent back to their villages, never to perhaps continue their education again. From Dichemso and JHS, this has been one of the main challenges which has resulted in the issue of chronic absenteeism over the years. Number three, no culture of reading public announcements. For instance, due to the nature of crime in urban communities, junior high school students have not been trained on how to handle public service. Whereas courts and national laws are often advanced. Libraries and schools in their communities have been closed. They have no serene environment, enabling them to have an attachment to their needs. My housing objects to TV, often with fear of facing outside the crime-related community. Such a child is development development. This accounts for fewer challenges. We have many who cannot read or even perform basic English. The fourth point is poor living conditions. When the environment has a strong influence and a parent or teacher, that child is likely to take attitudes from the environment where he or she is. Again, these are students from low income. Some live in slums, which are heavy properties, abhorrent, sex-regulated, and all manner of social evils. Within such an environment, it becomes difficult for the child to have any good influence, as the child is socialized to fit into a certain kind of lifestyle. Such students normally thrive in the little they make from hustling, and therefore treat their basic education at such tender age as secondary requirement. Teaching and learning differences. Just as there are issues with infrastructure development in rural communities, there are also issues with urban areas. During the pandemic, most private schools are doing teaching online. The focus shifted to education in remote areas, but has much affordable for open students in urban communities who cannot use computers, as there are students in rural areas. We must not forget the state of education and the private sector of education in urban areas to the female responsibilities in urban public schools. As NGOs and the media continue to shift attention to rural communities. We might begin to reconsider that there are unique problems in urban communities as well as which ought to be addressed. Finally, I want to congratulate on behalf of Dichemso and JHS, thank the elite Ghana for the wonderful work they are doing in the school. Their good work is there for all of them to see, or for everybody to come to the school and witness. Don't leave Ghana, don't leave Ghana. God bless all of you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peter Samoa, for sharing with us such insightful points on some of these neglected issues, and I very much took some points away. And if you just join the call, we are still addressing the neglected challenges facing students, urban students, in junior high schools, in the public sector of education. And we just heard from Mr. Peter Asamoah, who just spoke to us about some of the neglected challenges. He touched on issues that has to do with parenting, and then also foster parenting, and the issue that the point which talks about the myriad of activities in urban areas, which makes education not appealing to children in urban areas. And now let's quickly extend the conversation to Mr. Stephen Tetegan. Mr. Samoa just touched on some of the general challenges, Mr. Stephen, and he has brought to bear the neglected challenges. But then we want to zero in the conversation on the issue of literacy. We realize that within normally in rural areas, it is perceived that the issue of literacy is at higher stakes among children in rural areas. But then we don't know much about the public sector. Now, you have been a literacy advocate, and you have first-hand experience from the northern parts of Ghana, where you are known to have chalked some successes. What accounts for the literacy gap in public junior high schools, as it is rather perceived to be at higher stakes among children in rural or remote areas? Also, in what ways could these challenges be brought to the limelight? Mr. Stephen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lawrence, and thanks to Mr. Peter Samoa for sharing that very insightful message on some of these challenges. So from a literacy perspective, I generally feel that what you see today at not what is expected is that in very rural areas, there seems to be few people who do hold education in very high esteem, especially because this has provided an avenue for some people who are members of the community to be able to access some opportunities that the rest of the community or the rest of the individuals in the community who has not advanced in their education pursuit has not been able to access. And so we have cases of a woman, a single mother, for example, who is willing to sell their very last clothing to put their child to school because they can recall that their friends or someone like them attended the university, or someone upgraded or went to school, and the person became a better contributor to the progress of that community. Whereas when you compare that to some some urban areas today, we notice that the value of education is de-emphasized because there is booming economic activity that meets the livelihood needs of community members, such that whereas in the rural area, people feel that go to school so that they can get more opportunities, they can get a job and not be limited by the conditions of this rural setting. In the urban setting, they do not consider schooling as the means of living a financially sustainable life. So that de-emphasizes the relevance that some people in the urban sector attach to schools as compared to the rural areas. But beyond this is the assumption that once there is a school that is situated in a supposed urban area, that school is supposed to produce very bright students. That school is supposed to have the very best of teachers. And so because of these, there is not a lot of attention to this area. And it brings in the problem of categorization, because there are two things. There are inequalities among communities. So if you are comparing a small village in the Greater Accra region to the Ashanti regional capital like Kumasi, there's definitely a big difference between a small village and a regional capital. But beyond that difference in inequalities in communities, we also have inequalities within communities, such that there could be people staying in Kumasi, which is a big city, but the fact that they are staying in Kumasi does not necessarily mean that they are socio-economic activities, or their cost of living or standard of living is as high as the average. So it's important to make note of some of these challenges. But from the government perspective, it's important not to just see schools as being in urban areas and schools being in rural areas. I believe that it's important for us to begin to categorize schools according to the level of support they have in terms of infrastructure, in terms of strong parental support, such that there could be a school in the center of Accra that may not have the level of support that is available in a school in a village, because probably a village school do have the infrastructure that is needed, while a school in Accra may not have the same infrastructure. So just the location or the geography of the school may not be enough for giving us good information about the nature of that school. Now, zooming in on the literacy bit, what we notice is, especially in suburban areas, the relevance that is attached to literacy development, especially in the area of English, is low due to several factors. I've mentioned earlier that there are lots of economic activities beyond the formal sector, and so the utility of having English proficiency is low, because people begin to think that, even the students begin to think that, well, I know someone in my community who has built 5 houses, who owns 10 businesses, who is very popular and doing well, but this person has never set foot in a school. This person doesn't know how to speak English. So what is the use of speaking English when people cannot even say anything in English, but they own houses, they employ other people? So the utility that is attached to that, the speaking of English and literacy development, it's low from the student perspective. Whereas the actions of some teachers make students see the learning of English as some sort of injustice or violence being meted out to them, because the approach is, you are going to write your exams in English. We are teaching you English, so you must speak English. If you speak vernacular, I'm going to cane you. So it's more of some sort of epistemic violence, because number one, they are looking at English as a foreign language, and they are being forced to speak someone's language. And so it means for us as educators to begin to look at how we present English language as a global language that students need to complement with their local language, rather than needs to replace the foreign language with a local language. And I do not mind a language policy that allows teachers to use Twi, for example, to teach in a community that is predominantly Twi, and balance that view, so that students do not begin to look at English language as a foreign language that they are being forced to speak, even though they are not interested in. It also as well means for teachers of English language that you proceed from English instruction after you have introduced pupils to how relevant it is for them. Why should they be studying English? So it's not about just walking to the school, starting the term, and the first topic is noun. Today we are going to learn noun. What is a noun? Then you begin to teach. But your first few lessons should be dedicated to making people understand, why are you in school in the first place? Why must you study English? What value is this to you and your career? What opportunities are there in being able to speak English fluently? So when students begin to see the relevance, the importance, then they begin to develop the motivation to be able to learn and do well in their language studies. Beyond this, it's important for school-based interventions to happen, because lots of times you can't wait for the parent or for the government to come in. I created a podcast on developing literacy in school. You can check the podcast, Let's Talk Education, for that. I can share the link to the producer to share later. I talk in that podcast about various means and strategies that teachers can use in the school setting to improve literacy development. But most important among some of them is to provide materials that stimulate thinking, provide relevant books that engages people's attention, and adopt pedagogical approaches that involve students and make them see learning as an interesting thing. Another thing that is crucial to this conversation of neglecting literacy development in urban or supposed urban areas is the level of exposure that people are getting to other settings. Now we realize that the community has a strong impact on students, and so their worldview is somewhat limited by what is around them. They may not be familiar with life beyond the community for a lot of them. And so some partnership project that allows students to be communicating, to be writing letters, to be on video and calling and communicating with other people outside their setting may expose them and, for example, teach them that, well, if you are communicating with people in another community, let's say in Nigeria, you have to do business with someone who is not in Nigeria but in South Africa, or someone in Kenya, or someone outside Africa, say someone in England, then you would need English language to communicate. You want to understand that. So that level of exposure makes them believe that, well, it's not just about growing up in this community and looking for a job and making money, making family, but there's a big world out there. And this is where we can also bring in people from the community who has moved on to accomplish great things, have been exposed, to come back and say, hey, life is beyond this community. Life is beyond here. So you need to reach out. And for you to be able to reach out, you need to develop this skills and that skill. And one of them is your literacy proficiency. The last thing I'd want to touch on on this topic, it's the need for increased career education and guidance in schools in a way that allow people to align their career goals and to be able to see the long-term benefit of what they are doing in class today, whether it is English, whether it's Dagbani or Chi or it's mathematics. I believe that lessons should relate to life and should relate to the goal of the student to think about, well, what am I looking for to get from education? What are my plans for me? And how is teaching or learning science or English or Chi today relevant to that? So being able to draw that line, one of the theories of motivation is achievement. It helps people understand that this is what I want to achieve. In order for me to be able to achieve, I need these elements of them is for me to see actual enthusiasm for I'm learning in school. Then there is the point about teachers encouraging people, motivating them, setting good examples, and using positive reinforcement to ensure that good behavior is good behavior is emulated, not eliminated. So, I would end here, and I'm sure we'll have some chance during the question and answers to expand on some of these issues. Thank you very much, Lauren.
Thank you, Stephen, for sharing with us in-depth analysis on the issue of literacy and how important literacy is to the education and to the world at large. Thank you so much. I'll quickly take some comments from the chat box and see. Okay, there's no comments yet, but we'll be glad to have you share your reflection on the conversation, and then we'll take our last guest for the call for today. So our last guest for the call today is Mr. Douglas. Mr. Douglas, say welcome. We have been working with you as the head of Dichemso MA, and we want to commend you for a quick response to issue and your sense of leadership. Mr. Samoa has touched some of the issues or some of the challenges that we are facing, such as parenting and then students staying with foster parents and all that. How has these neglected challenges impacted upon the academic performance of the school over the years? And also, how or what has been done under your leadership in collaboration with Lead for Ghana to address the neglected challenges?
All right, thank you, Madam Flores. Before I say anything at all, I just want to appreciate the good work of Lead for Ghana, and once again for T4 Education for the opportunity that they have given to us to tell our story. Mr. Peter Samoa and Tetega, they have done a good job giving us most of the effects, and then Mr. Tetega did give a vivid description of what it takes to be in an urban community and in a rural community. But back to your question, talking about the effects, there are so many effects that these neglected challenges can have on people's learning in the classroom. The first one I want to talk about is chronic absenteeism. Since I assumed office as a head teacher, one of the major challenges I would have to tackle is absenteeism, because you know that teaching takes place in the classroom, not in their homes. And when a student decides to come to school today and then the next day he's absent, it makes the learning process very difficult. It is a task that teachers will need to deal with so that the learning environment will become safe and conducive. The last time I checked our attendance rate for the last semester, far below 70%, which is unacceptable. So we have to deal with that. The second one I want to talk about is ill health. You know, we say that a sound mind in a sound body. So when these foster parents or guardians do not give them the basic needs, food, clothing, and shelter, they come to the classroom and teachers will have to support them with their meager salary, with food. Sometimes I remember at my first station in Kumasi, I had to just give some of my clothing to the children in order to motivate them. And so this is also one of the effects. Again, because they live, most of them live, I will have to just give the statistics that in my school, about 75% of my pupils live with foster parents. And even out of the remaining 25% that stays with their parents, only about 10 of them stays with both parents, mother and father, and the rest either divorce or whatever. So I want to talk about grooming these kids. Because they are not living with their biological parents, it becomes difficult for them to get the time to experiment with things, to develop their career well, because they are shaped by the society in which they are, and they are not able to develop their career well. I will move on to poor performance in our BEC over the years, performance in BEC, because that is the criteria with which we are using to judge the students. O2 in 2007 said that academic performance is the capacity to achieve when one is tested on what he or she has learned. So you see, in this case, it is this that we use, and our students must pass. Quickly, I want to go on to what we have been doing at our end to mitigate these challenges. The first thing we have been doing now is to foster the relationship between parents and teachers or school administrators. You see, there is a saying that charity begins at home, and our parents, they spend much time with their parents than they spend in school. So we have begun through phone calls and home visits, trying to educate parents on the need to invest in their wards education. And also we get input from them as to how best to develop the school. Secondly, like Mr. Tetega said, we have been strengthening guidance and counseling in our schools. We have to change the mindset of the people. For me, I always say that Dichemso JHS is now the model school in the city, because I have to change their mindset and intrinsically motivate them to fight for higher pursuits in life. This includes setting clear guidelines, communication guidelines for them, because most of these children, they come to school, they are already tired, they already have challenges. So we need to set clear communication guidelines. We need the teachers to take them as their friends, so that when they have issues, they will know where and when to approach their teachers or administrators or for anyone for help. I also want to mention that Lead for Ghana has been helping a lot in my school. For instance, they have helped with integrating ICT into teaching. And with this, we are privileged to have received books from EduSport Ghana to start with our library. Including ICT in teaching makes teaching very easy to understand. Learning becomes fun, and they are exposed to this world of ICT. You know, the world is now moving to ICT, and so now the school, we have Facebook account, we have email account, WhatsApp, and the rest. The next thing I want to talk about is collaborating with influential people in the community. You know, in the rural areas, we will talk about the chief, we will talk about the chiefs and the other people. But when you come to the city, urban communities, people who are influential, like government appointees, like church leaders or Islamic leaders, they become the influential people. So we have reached out to these people to always be coming into the school to speak with these kids and to motivate them. Lastly, I want to talk about how the formation of school-based clubs is helping the school in order to mitigate these neglected challenges. Since the formation of literacy club and the debating club in my school, it has improved the performance of the pupils in terms of reading, in terms of basic arithmetic, and I have to commend Lead for Ghana. To sum it up, I want to say that all the stakeholders, i.e. the government, SMC PTA, parents, teachers, we all have a role to play, and we must play our role effectively so that we achieve our aim and goal. I'll end here, and maybe if there are further questions or comments, we deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. We can see there have been great inputs from your school in helping solve these neglected challenges, and that's great. And we hope that the fellows in your school and the community as a whole will help come together to solve these neglected challenges. I would like to read some comments from the chat box. It says, Lead for Ghana is certainly showing the way in education in Ghana. Thanks. From a different person without a name, the person says, great submission there, Mr. Stephen. It's important that students understand the relevance of the content that we teach. That's very true. Thanks there. We also have another comment saying parents cannot be overemphasized when it comes to providing quality education. So thank you for your comments. Thank you. We are still open for questions. You can share your questions at the Q&A box, and then we'll be happy to reply them. I'll hand over to Lawrence to continue.
Okay, thank you very much, Florence, and our panel for sharing your reflections about the theme that we have on the table for today. But then quickly, I want to ask Mr. Stephen Senor Tetega. You were in the northern region as a lead for Ghana fellow. Let's find out who were the stakeholders in the community and how did they help you address the issue of literacy. I know you were able to put up a library at Kalpohene. So we want to find out who are the stakeholders and what were their contributions in helping you address the literacy challenge.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Can I check if you can hear me?
Yes, Stephen, we can hear you.
Okay. So the major stakeholders in the school I taught in were the parents, then the Muslim clerics or the Muslim leaders, because there was an Islamic school, and then the local unit committee under the local government system. So the engagement started with home visits, making sure we go to the children's home after school, and most of the parents were surprised to see us as teachers come to them because they've seen children go up and down learning all along, but have never witnessed a teacher visiting them before. So anytime parents see you in their house, it re-emphasizes the point that you do care about their work progress enough to follow them even from the school, to come to the home, to find out about their welfare, how they're doing, and how you can provide more support. So biggest alliance, were that once they have that trust, it immediately makes them believe and involve themselves, and also encourage their children to be involved in anything you're doing. So if we call for literacy club meeting, they are always there. Even if they won't come, their parents will push them and encourage them to come. We want them to be coming to the school to learn every evening. Now there are years that the girls will pass somewhere, they'll go somewhere. We give them that assurance that we'll make sure they come, we'll take attendance. So that understanding helps us to get students to come to the school every evening to learn, come to the library every evening to learn what we call for programs, and also get them involved. I particularly, for example, would go to the house, and when I get to the house of a parent, I gather all the children there, we read the book, we enjoy. So it makes them very interested in reading because it becomes more of a fun activity. And I remember on a few occasions that the children in the area would actually gather themselves and come to my house that they want to read because they begin to see that as a very interesting activity and we have fun through the process. Beyond engaging the parents as well as the unit committee. So we, through our community entrance activity, we made the unit committee aware of our mission here. And at the point where we wanted to build a library, we know that we need sustainability of every project that we want. And that means that it is accepted by the community and supported by the community. So we started by engaging the unit committee. From there, we involved the chief. For example, at a point, we had to announce in the community that this is happening. There's a literacy club, there's a program happening here. Everyone should make sure that their parents attend. So when a child is going, everyone in the community, oh, this is where they are going. And then other parents begin to say, oh, this girl is going. Are you not also a student? Won't you also go? So that sort of interactions made us galvanize community support for our project. And the unit committee, for example, was able to help us secure a land. A Muslim cleric, Alhaji Sani, however, God bless him so much, he donated his land for free as a community member for the library to be put up. The unit committee galvanized the community to provide free labor, and they said, this library is for the community. We want our children to read better. We want them to do well. So you don't have to budget or think about the building. You just get the building materials, and then we'll be there to build the library. Once the library is built, we have to put in a system to ensure that it is sustainable. So when doing the building, before the building, the community was involved. During that, the community was involved. On the day of commissioning, a committee was launched with
representatives from all sectors of the community. There was a Christian rep, Muslim rep, all the schools had a rep on the library committee. There was a rep from the education office, the unit committee. So that made it possible for there to be community ownership of the space, so that people are allowed to use the space and they accept it as they
Okay, Stephen. So thank you very much for that important point as to the role of stakeholders. But then I want to quickly take the conversation to Mr. Douglas. You know, we are talking about shining the spotlight through storytelling. And Mr. Douglas, government schools in Ghana, what message do you have for them based on the Lead for Ghana's success, based on the Dichemso MA JHSA success, which has to do with how we have used storytelling on social media to get people to support? I want you to send a message to your colleague headmasters on how they can use social media, because now we have millions of people on social media every day. So how should government schools in Ghana start the process of leveraging the tool of social media to get people to support them in urban areas?
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Yes, thank you once again for the question. See, I always say that you are what you think you are. It all begins with determination. We have some headmasters who we refer to them as before computers. But if you want to do it, you have to learn, draw young ones who know ICT closer to you and let them help you. We have to reach out to, first of all, stakeholders like all students who are young and who are somehow well endowed to come back to the school and then help the school. We are talking about integrating ICT or media into learning. We will need resources. We will need material resources. And we will need human resources as well.
Okay, Mr. Douglas, let me chip this in. You know, now almost every teacher in the public sector has a smartphone. So I want us to look at the angle of the teachers themselves. Okay, the angle of the teachers themselves, not at the external level of what the school needs, because we already know that most of these schools do not have the infrastructure, but almost every teacher has a smartphone and almost every teacher is on the internet. So a word to teachers as to how they can use social media to get people to support the students who are struggling in their class. It could be financial. I mean, it could even be a problem that the school itself is going through. Yes.
Yes, like I earlier said, nowadays we can use the social media. That is faster than the traditional email or paper. What we have done doing is to go on Facebook, to go on Twitter, WhatsApp, and other. Teachers themselves will have to solicit for help or go to the net and then download materials that are relevant to their subject and then use it to teach. In this case, it makes teaching very well and fun. Talking about, I mentioned that through the help of sports and other states, we've been able to do our life. We solicited for book drive and then it is helping. So that we want now.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Douglas Edu Nyanteji. I'm already enjoying the conversation from my end, but then time will then permit for us to continue. And so all too soon, we are bringing the conversation to an end. And I want to quickly take this question. There's a question in the chat box that says, were there any challenges in getting these stakeholders on board? Were there any challenges in getting these stakeholders on board? Within the space of 1 minute, I think I'll let Stephen answer this question. Were there any challenges in getting these stakeholders on board? Stephen, just 1 minute.
All right, thanks. So yes, there were some challenges in getting the stakeholders on board, and that was because it was something that is new and wasn't happening. I remember a particular time that we followed a female to the house. The parents were alarmed. They thought that she had done something wrong. That is why we came to visit. So initially, it was more of either they've done something wrong, they are coming to do something against them, or there were also fears about teacher-student relationships because there's been some history relating to that. But with time, that trust was developed, and then it wasn't an issue any longer. We made them understand that we are working together for the same good.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen. To the anonymous person who asked this question, I hope this is well answered. Because of time, we are bringing the session to an end. Quickly, let me share with you our 5 steps to replicate in your school. And the first one has to do with building positive relationships with both students and parents or guardians. And our headmaster has spoken much about it, so I don't want to continue because of time. And then secondly, we want to identify and work with the influential stakeholder in the urban community. For example, if you are talking about the rural community, you know that the chief might have more influence. But then when you come to the urban scene, it may not be the same. So you want to identify the most influential stakeholder. It could be the pastor of the community, and you want to work with that. And then the third point has to do with creating school-based clubs as a cool mechanism. And then again, we are using social media as a tool to rally for support for your cause. Now, social media is a powerful tool, and we have used it in the school to get people to support some students. So you just want to leverage on that to cast the spotlight on the challenges that the students are facing. And finally, you want to partner with youth-centered organizations because they serve as windows of opportunity for your students to see the world beyond their classroom as they share their stories. Thank you very much for being on the call today, wherever you are watching us live all over the world. Quickly, we want to thank T4 World Education for giving us this platform to reach out to teachers and stakeholders all over the world regarding education. We also want to thank Lead for Ghana. We want to thank our coaches, Avis, Emily, Mariam, and all of you for supporting our school celebration. We also want to thank our technical team, Jeffrey, Jeremiah, Mustafa, Fedos. You guys are doing well. And thank you, marketing team, Isaac, Maxwell. And then again, we want to thank our panel for making time to be on the call today. Thank you very much, Stephen, Mr. Douglas, Mr. Samoa. Mr. Samoa is 70 years old, actually. But this morning, we had to bring him here. And we really want to thank you so much for making time to be on the call this morning. If you do not hear from us, we'll see you next year. Thank you very much. We'll meet again. Bye.
Join Time Magazine's lead education reporter alongside global educators and advocates to explore the impacts of fitness.
My students' families.
It helps my students thrive in the face of adversity.
Students who can forgive are happier.
Join us to hear from teachers and thought leaders on how and why to include forgiveness in your classroom.
Have more than doubled in kids.
Cape Town is running out of water.